Hey beauties, you're welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Winifred and I am super excited about today's tutorial. Today's tutorial is on how to draft an asymmetric cupped corset blouse with a Queen Anne neckline. I made this for my client and obviously you can see that she totally loved her dress. She was so excited and she shared this video with me and I was super happy about it. If this is what you like to learn, definitely keep on watching. Like my videos, share with your family and friends and even your enemies. Without too much talking, let's get to the honey of this video. This tutorial is going to be the pattern drafting and we'll do the sewing tutorial in the next video. So let's go. I love you. Hey beauty, welcome to my channel. So I've taken my pattern paper and I've drawn out my lines, my bust point, the under bust, the waist and the hip line, which is also my blouse length. And the next thing I'm going to be doing is to take my shoulder measurement divided by 2 and I am going to mark that and come down by 1 inch on that part, and I'll mark my neck width of 3 inches and then I'm going to connect that into a straight line so to form my shoulder slant. We already know that, we've done that a lot on this channel. So the next thing I'm going to be doing is to mark my armhole depth. So I'm just going to create that line on all sides like this so I can draw out a straight line which is also going to serve as my chest line. So this is my armhole and I'm just going to draw a tentative armhole right now so that we can understand what I am doing. This is not going to be the final armhole. So to draw the armhole, I'm marking out my bust measurement divided by 4 and I'm just going to draw that out as my armhole. This is not our actual armhole, it's just a tentative armhole so we can know what we are doing. Later on we are going to draw out the actual armhole that we are going to be using for this tutorial. So I'm using this ready-made cup. It's a size 38 cup. It is written on one side of the cup if you can see it. So it's a size 38 cup. So now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to mark my bust span measurement, that's my nipple to nipple, divided by 2, and I'm going to mark that my nipple to nipple, the nipple to nipple of this client was 8 inches, divided by 2 is 4 inches, and I marked that from the hip line all the way to the bust point. So I drew out a straight line, and once that is done, the next thing I am going to be doing is to mark out the space I want to be at the middle of my corset. So if you want 1 inch to be at the middle, you are going to mark ½ inch on this paper because this is the half bodice. All right, so by the time you open it up you will have 1 inch, and if you want ½ inch you divide that ½ inch by 2 and mark it. So but for me I wanted 1 inch, so I marked ½ inch on that part and I'm trying to place my bust on it, so that will just serve as a guide of where my bust is going to stop. All right, so now you can decide to draw your bust straight as you've seen earlier, or you can decide to slant it, but this tutorial the cup was slanted. So what I'm going to do is that I'm just going to tilt it a little bit starting from the under bust. As you can see, the cup is sitting on the under bust area, so you are going to sit it on the under bust area and tilt it a little bit, and then you are just going to draw it out. Don't forget that the mark at the middle, that ½ inch that we marked earlier, is going to be where your cup is going to stop. All right, so I'm just marking out the down part and the upper part of my cup. I marked out the upper part of my cup because that is where my yoke is going to be sitting, so it will serve as a guideline for me. So from the part where my cup stopped, I just marked out about 4.5 inches and then I connected that to my neckline with a straight line, so that will serve as my yoke. So the next thing we're going to do now is to take our dart. So on the waistline I just took ½ inch on both sides and then I connected that to my under bust like so, and I also connected it to my hip line like so. So the next thing we're going to do is to work on our measurements, like to draft it. So for the bust I've already marked out my bust divided by 2 and then I just added the allowance, and for the waist I'm going to mark my waist divided by 2 and then I marked 2 inches allowance. For my waist I took out 2 inches from the actual waist. Our actual waist is 32 inches, so I took out 2 inches. So by the time you take out 2 inches from the actual waist, you are going to use the rest to mark out your waistline measurement, and then you add your allowance. And on the hip, I measured out my hip divided by 4, and I also added 2 inches allowance to that. So now let's work on the scallop, the asymmetric part of the down part of the blouse. So on that part of the waist, I just marked out the midpoint, and then I'm going to draw out a straight line like so. This is going to guide me on how I'm going to do. So at first I went up by 2 inches on that line, and then I just connected it like so. But later on I realized that it was not giving what I really wanted. It was not giving the exact picture that the client wanted. So I went out to draw out with my pencil again. So first, let's make some modifications. I'm going to draw out a new armhole now, because I want my armhole to sit on the cup to sit on the armhole area, so that there won't be any gaping. So what I've done is that I used my pencil to mark it out, and I'm just trying to see how my cup is going to sit. As you can see, the cup is sitting on the armhole already. So I've just created another armhole with my pattern, and then with my pencil, and then I'm using my green marker, to just mark it out, just to draw a new cup. I did not shift it from the old cup, all right. I'm just trying to see how it's going to sit. Then I used my green marker to trace out the armhole, to curve it out to meet the cup, and make sure that it's not too inside like the first one of the black one. Then for the down part, this is where the hip is stopping, all right. So on that hip side, because this is a Victorian or conical corset, I went out by ½ inch so that it can be more conical, and then I connected that to my waist, all right, with my green marker. So once I did that, that other line is going to be off, and then from that line that I marked earlier, I'm going to come in by 1.5 inches, and then I drew that on a straight line, and then from that line I went up by 1.5 inches again. So I'm going to connect from that 1.5 inches to the edge of my paper towards the center front. I'm closing my dart now so that I can have a straight, smooth transition, all right. And then I'm going to curve it out and end it at the point where the hip measurement stops. You see the way I just curved it out, and then that is how it's going to be. So I would advise that you follow what I do. Just use your pencil to draw out your outline first before using out your marker or whatever you are using, or your pen to draw it out. It will make it more easier. So I'm going to show the cutting part so that you don't make any mistakes. So I'm just cutting on the green line now for everywhere that I've made my modifications, and once I've done that, I'm going to continue to cut out the black lines, which is the normal pattern that we created earlier. So that side is going to go off. So I am going to cut out my yoke first. So when cutting, you have to be really careful. Then you cut out the seat of the yoke, it's sitting on the corset. After cutting that, then you cut out your cup area, but on this side of the cup, just at that edge, just mark out that ½ inch. So you're just going to cut it like that, and then you trace out the cup. You can see that there is ½ inch allowance at this side, so by the time we cut it on our fabric, it's going to be 1 inch, all right. Then I'm cutting out my cup. This cup is going to be removed. We are not needing it because we are going to be replacing it with a ready-made cup. And then I am marking out my yoke, and then I am just putting arrows on, pointing out arrows to where each is facing, so that by the time I am cutting and by the time I want to stitch it out, it will be easy for me. You can try to close your darts, but for this tutorial I just want the darts to be separate. So I'm cutting out the dart open from the center front and the side front, and then I'm using arrows to connect it, like to mark out where each is facing. You need to mark out where each is facing after drafting your pattern, so that it can be easy for you to join together by the time you are sewing it. So this is how it is going to sit. For this down part, you can create any design of your choice, but this is the design I am working with. Now for the back, I'm gonna have to draw out the outlines, the chest line, the waist and the hip, and then I went ahead to draw out my armhole like so. So the next thing I'm going to do is to divide my bust span divided by 2. That's my nipple to nipple, and then I'm going to mark that all the way from the hip to the chest line. So the nipple to nipple is 8 inches, divided by 2 is 4, and that is what I've marked out. And then on the waistline, I took ½ inch on both sides for the dart, and I'm connecting that to the hip, and I'm also going to connect that straight to the chest line. So there is no big deal on the back. It's just a yoke. It's going to have a yoke, an open yoke at the back. And then so for the bust, I've already marked out my bust divided by 4, and I added 2 inches allowance to that. Don't forget for the waistline, I took out 1 inch. Don't mind me, I took out 1 inch for the waistline, but I later took another 1 inch, so I removed 2 inches from the waistline. So you're going to deduct 2 inches from the waistline before marking out the actual waistline you are working with, and add 2 inches allowance. So for the hip, I marked my hip divided by 4. I'm just measuring what I added at the front to make it more conical. It was ½ inch, and then I added my 2 inches allowance, and then I'm just connecting my lines with my pattern master. So once this is done, you're just going to mark out the midpoint of the waistline like we did to the front area. Draw a straight line, and we're just going to follow every step that we followed in the front part of this video. Take 1.5 inch on from that point, take 1.5 inch upwards, and then close your dart. So I'm closing my dart now. I'm taking my 1.5 inch upwards, and then I'm just connecting it with my pencil first, because I don't want to make any mistake before I draw it out with my pattern marker. All right, so I'm gonna have to draw it out. If you don't remember what you marked out on the back, just measure what you have on the front. And so for the neckline, my neck width is 3 inches and the neck depth is 1 inch. So the dart is going to go off, and those 2 lines are not needed. All right, so because this is going to have a loop at the back, so for the back neckline, I'm just going to connect it like that. I first used my pencil to connect it, and then I connected it with my marker. So it's just going to sit like that, just connecting from the chest line to the neck point. And then at the center back, I'm going to take off 1.5 inches. All right, so I'm just going to take off 1.5 inches, and then I'm going to draw out a straight line to that. So I'm just going to mark that out. That is also not needed. All right, so once all of that is done, I'm just going to cut it out. So I'm cutting out my slant first, then I am going to cut out the sides. Remember that on all my patterns, I did not add any sewing allowance except to the sides. I added 2 inches allowance for the sewing on the sides. I didn't add any other allowance to the bust span, to the neckline, and all what have you. So we are going to do that when we are cutting our pattern. So I'm going to have to cut out the neckline. So the first thing you are going to do now is to cut out your yoke. So I'm going to cut out my yoke first, and then I'm cutting it through the dart. I'm taking my time to show this cutting video because I do not want you to make any mistake whatsoever when you are doing yours, because this is somehow tricky and I want you to have a perfect pattern. So that place, there's going to be a button or hook at that point, and then I am going to cut out the remaining dart, the yoke part. I'm cutting off the yoke part, and then I'm going to cut out the part where there will be the loop. All right, so this is how it's going to be sitting. So that place we have a open, a kind of open keyhole at the back, if that is what it's called. You saw that in the video I shared earlier. Then I am going to cut out the place where the back lacing is going to sit. All right, I'm also going to mark out my points where the upper part is, the sides, the down part, and I'm just using arrows to mark everything. So after drafting your pattern, you really need to mark out everything so that you do not get confused, because you can make mistake. So mistake has no master. So just act as a beginner anytime you are sewing a corset dress. If you've gotten to this point and you are not yet subscribed, kindly click the subscribe button, give me a like, because that is what will make me know that you love what I am doing on here, and it's also going to help the algorithm to push my video to a larger audience. Thank you. So I've gone ahead to cut it all on my fabric. I cut out the lining and the main fabric. So on the next video that I'm going to be posting will be the sewing part. Thank you for watching, and bye.